Hello and welcome back, and that is right, today we are revisiting the subject of Synology memory once again, and this time we are looking at this, the Synology DS2422 Plus, and in today's video we're going to be testing this system out with a series of unofficial memory, and by unofficial memory I mean memory that isn't Synology's own. Now this system takes advantage of DDR4 memory, even arrives with DDR4 3200 megahertz ECC memory. This system uses some great memory from Synology inside. However, a number of you look at how much that memory costs when you want to upgrade and kind of go, ooh, that seems pricey. Synology memory is expensive. There's no two ways about it, but a number of users out there who are looking at this system think, do you know what? I reckon I can go Crucial, I can go Kingston, I can go Samsung, I can go elsewhere and get similar, if not better, memory. So in today's video, I'm just going to be testing out some different memory. We're running the DS2422 with DSM 7.1. We've already got the system set up with 4 drives and a RAID array. I've already got it on screen, and we're going to be flicking back and forth between installing the memory and bench testing to see that it is recognised by the system. But a few disclaimers straight off the bat. First and foremost, what we are doing today is counter to Synology's compatibility and indeed their official support on this product. You are going to be running a setup if you're using unofficial memory that is not endorsed by the brand. So if you do encounter any problems, there is a chance they may not support you, so do bear that in mind. Second thing to bear in mind, Synology's Assistant application, the Synology Assistant for PC and Mac systems, does have a memory testing facility built in, and I strongly recommend, whether you use Synology memory or third-party memory, that you use that feature. It will take the system out of commission for a short period of time, as the memory testing can take several hours, but still nonetheless I would strongly recommend utilising it regardless of the memory installation. Now, because of the setup of today's video, so I can access my laptop to do a lot of the DSM stuff and double checking the system's running and get to the memory base on this system and try to keep the whole thing on camera, we've got a lot of proximity problems right now. And although the microphone right here is in my, my voice line, also in the voice line is the fan on this laptop and the fans on this system and the general hum of those enterprise grade drives inside. So I apologise for some of the background and ambient noise in this video. I'm going to try as hard as I can. So first memory we're going to be testing is this Sabrent's DDR4 3200 megahertz memory modules. We're going to be running these inside the system, and we're going to talk a little bit about the memory throughout the video. After that, we're going to be testing Crucial's own memory, the DDR4. All the model IDs are linked in the description below. And finally, after the couple of 16s, we're going to be looking at a couple of 32 gig DDR4 SODIMM modules there. But do bear in mind, again, that the memory we're looking at here is not identical in architecture to the one inside. And again, as we go through each memory module, I'll go into a little bit more detail there. But for now, let's make our way over to the screen. Click, and we're over. So from here, we're able to go into the control panel and find out more information about our system. In the hardware power section, I should say, we should go into the info center. We can see the system has that 4 gig of memory inside. So it's visible, it's there. And for now, let's go ahead and shut down this NAS, and then from there, as soon as the system's shut down, I'll make our way into the memory upgrades. Let's make our way back over to the camera now. So here we are back on the camera, and when the system's powered down, what we're going to be doing is removing this side panel here. The DS2422, much like other 12 bays, is quite unique in its chassis design. The system isn't one large chassis piece all the way around. It's actually comprised of 3 separate compartments. This one for maintenance, so you can see the full internal empty cavity there. The top bay up there is to access the PCIe upgrade slot, and the side here is how we can access the memory modules there on the side. So the system has just finished spinning down, and again, I am going to speed things up a little bit on this video because you've got lives, you've got stuff you need to do, but if ever I do something that I wouldn't strongly recommend, I'll let you know. First and foremost, make sure when you're utilising any NAS and doing any upgrades or in accessing any internals, remove the power. Second thing, where possible, ground yourself, wear gloves, do anything you can do to limit static. And finally, when moving the device around, make sure the drives are completely spun down to nothing. Give it a few minutes grace. Again, I'm going to be gentle and I'm not going to do that for the sake of keeping everything on camera to save you waiting around. but I strongly recommend letting the system spin down. So we're just going to very gingerly turn it around. We're going to remove this panel. I've already removed the screws. That should slide off there. As we can see, there's our ventilated Synology panel. And the first memory modules we're going to be going for are those Sabrent. So as you can see, inside there is our DDR4 ECC 3200 memory module there, the Synology one that's inside there via a single module. And again, this system has a rated maximum of 32 gigabytes of memory. So again, we'll move those over there. So first things first, let's remove this. There's our official memory module. I don't know how well you can make that out on camera if I tilt it because of the light. And yep, it is a 3200 ECC DDR4 module there. So let's pop that to the side. So first module there, pop that in. As has been pointed out to me several times in the past, it is important to let the system have a bit of extra time to spin up, to check the memory on first installation. Double check that all the clips are in. These Sabrent modules have got a heat shield on top for heat dissipation, but the result then is that sometimes they can be a little bit tricksy to shove inside there. So what I'm going to do is leave this on the table. I'm going to leave the cover off so you can see the modules that are in there. But again, I do strongly recommend when doing this for yourself, keep that panel on the side there because it ensures the integrity of the cooling on the system. So again, we're going to get the power back in. And while there's a car alarm going off somewhere in the distance, I don't know if you can hear that, let's go ahead and power the device back on. So again, those fans are going to spin up early doors when the system's booting up for the very first time. On the PC, while I'm doing this, I'm just going to get the Synology Assistant there on screen and get ready to affirm the device's kind of live nature on the network. So the system's going to take a few minutes to boot. Again, it will differ depending on the memory modules you use. When I did some testing on DSM 7.1, I've since made a follow-up video to the video I'm going to talk about. Oh, it's so confusing. When I was testing different third-party memory in DSM 7.1, as mentioned, a number of you were keen to point out that sometimes memory modules take longer than others for the system to recognize them, sometimes as high as 10, 20, even 30 minutes. So if this takes more than a couple of minutes, I'll go ahead and speed up things for us there on screen. Don't worry, I'm sure you've got stuff to do. But again, we've already created a RAID on this. We've been utilising this system. It was supplied by CCL, the retail site in the UK. Again, we've plugged them before. They've backed us up on videos. The link's in the description, and they supplied this device. So straight away, I can see all the multiple lights blinking up on the front of the machine. That means that the system is fast approaching full boot. And shortly, it's going to go ahead, verify the RAID that's there on board and load DSM 7.1 for us. There's our beep. That's the other nice little sign that we're waiting to see. And then finally, we'll start making our way into DSM 7 on this system. Do you know what? Let's speed things up a tiny bit. Right, so our system is ready to be found. So let's make our way over to the screen. Bang, and here we are. Let's refresh that page and make our way in. So again, we'll log into our device, looking good so far. So what we're looking for here is, one, is the system going to identify all 16 gig of memory, and two, is the system going to give us a warning or any kind of notification to tell us that that memory is unsupported. We've got a notification here at the top, and as we can see, there's some testing we've been doing before for a previous video on drive compatibility. You can largely ignore all of this here. It's also mentioning about Bay 9. This is something we've also been discussing when our system, if we go into the storage pool, in case you're alarmed about this, we've been bench testing unofficial drive media on this system for a video coming up very, very soon. But for now, if we make our way into the control panel and make our way into the information center, we can see, boom, our 16 gig of memory is visible there. Now, I know I could do extensive testing, and we will be doing further testing on part 3 of our DSM 7.1 memory video, but I'm not going to do that today. But just before I go ahead and shut the device down, let's shut you down for our next test. Again, I do recommend going into the Synology Assistant tool, that tool that you probably used to set up your NAS for the first time, and then from there, go into the little cog at the top, tick this option here for memory test. Once you've done that, you can then make your way into the Synology Assistant, highlight the NAS that you want to test, and then a new option will have presented itself, memory test. You select memory test and then go through the options here. It will then scan the system's memory and run several diagnostic checks to make sure that memory is usable and consistent. However, when you do that, the system will be inaccessible for hours, so do remember that there. But for now, I can just hear the drives there starting to spin down there in the background. So what we're going to do is make our way back to the other camera in 3, 2, 1, and here we are, we're back. The system has powered down, so once again we remove our power out, and we remove our successful memory. And again, I'm using the camera here, so fingers crossed I don't plunge my fist into this device. Let's go ahead there. Once again, I do strongly recommend safe kind of electricity, static and personal working practices when you're doing this. I'm being slightly more caveman about this because this is a YouTube video and I'm just trying to get through this without cutting it too much and therefore undermining the results a little bit. But let's go with our first memory module, and again this is the Crucial module. All of these are linked in the description. Let's go with that module there, pop you in, and then our next module there. Installing. We're all clicked in, move our system back into place, grab our power, power in, and once again let's boot our system, and we're going in. So again, when we talked about memory on systems like this, why have Synology been so, immovable, arguably stubborn perhaps, on a lot of the upgrades such as hard drives, PCIe upgrades and memory upgrades on their system? Well, there's a few arguments floating around on that, with no single argument fully being confirmed by the brand or anyone of any higher up position. It's a lot to do with Synology trying to move into this upper echelon tier of data storage providers. Again, the NetApps, the EMCs, the big boys who provide not just solutions but all-encompassing hybrid cloud solutions. Synology have already begun this process with some incredibly enterprise-level solutions, providing a lot of that back-end in DSM to fulfill the needs of buyers looking at cloud storage providers with software as a service, SaaS, and combined PaaS, platform as a service providers. This combined with having a huge amount of protected data for your business, as well as legacy data and archival data, and the combination of cloud and bare metal is something that's always drawn the enterprise level buyer towards, again, NetApp, EMC and stuff like that, and HP and stuff. But the fact of the matter is they are incredibly expensive, and as expensive as Synology may seem sometimes, they're still considerably more affordable than those upper echelon brands. Yes, those upper echelon brands largely define their area of the market, and they do provide a number of services that Synology and many others don't, such as 24/7 hotlines and support on ground advanced replacement. But Synology is slowly closing ground on that, and I think a lot of this attitude towards proprietary and branded hardware upgrades and accessories is moving towards that direction. But for now, we've heard the beep. Let's make our way back into the laptop. So once again, 3, 2, 1, and we're back in. So we're going to be heading in. Let's log back into our NAS. Things are looking pretty sweet. Forgive the looking at the keyboard. I use about 5 different keyboards every day, and for the record, it's ruining my touch typing. So once again, we're going in. We'll go into the hardware manager in the info center there, and once again, now we're seeing our 32 gig of memory. We're not seeing a warning there. We're not seeing anything to deter us. Once again, on the right hand side of the screen, we're still seeing those notifications from when I was doing my hard drive testing for another video, but we're still not seeing anything too worrisome about the memory there with the system warning us. So I think that's pretty good for now. Let's come out of it there, and we'll start shutting our system down, and we'll get ready for our next test. So that's the system that's going to begin shutting down there, and we'll make our way slowly into our third and final test. Those two 32 gig modules arriving at a combination 64 gig of DDR4 memory there. Now, one thing I've not really talked about throughout the course of this video is the subject of ECC, error correcting code, or error code correction. This is memory that arrives with an extra little nugget there on the board. If we remove the label slightly on the memory inside this system, you will see that there are 5 modules on that side of the board. There is 4 on that side as well, but there are 5 modules. That additional odd numbered module is there because as data is passed through the memory inside this system, that extra little cell there is checking the data as it arrives and leaves and creates a blueprint there that it then will heal or repair the data in as it passes through to avoid any inconsistencies that might be problematic later. And a lot of enterprise level users swear by ECC memory. So clearly that's another big reason why Synology have opted for it, but the system has powered down. Let's remove our memory for the third and hopefully final time. And we'll go in and remove our memory there on the side. I'm just going to look at you longingly when really what I'm doing is looking at that memory module as I put my hands around this enormous NAS drive here to try and get to that memory module. And again, this final module, that 32 gig Kingston module, actually begins our pathway towards using memory that's outside of the maximum supported capacity of this system and that CPU. So now there is the argument about whether even if we can see this memory, whether indeed it still counts, because it may not be able to handle it. So let's go in, pop it inside, model 1 in. The hope is that we're going to see 64 gig of memory there. Let's go ahead. Once again, I apologise for how I'm handling these memory modules. It's purely for the sake of haste. We're getting those in. They're clipped in. That feels secure. Let's move that there. Grab our power. And we're in. So for the third and final time, let's go ahead and 3, 2, 1, and we're in. So we're going to let this system do its spinning up, its fanning up. So do you need ECC memory in this system? I would argue yes. This is a big, big NAS. 12 bays of storage there. And again, whether you do use Synology hard drives or decide to use WD and Seagate and go third party or unsupported, whatever you want to call it, that's still going to be a tremendous amount of data, even if you only populated it with 4 or 6 TB drives. Now, that is a lot of data moving back and forth, and if you've invested in a system with this much data storage capacity, clearly that's your mindset. If you've been looking at this over the 6 or 8 bay equivalent with the same processor there, that means your data is particularly important. And ECC memory, particularly for fast moving small data and databases that comprise of tens, if not hundreds, if not millions of files, then ECC memory then proves itself. The whole point of ECC memory is you should never need to know that it did its job, which I know is slightly tangential and therefore implies a kind of snake oil salesman attitude. But the fact of the matter is at this data storage level, I would still recommend ECC memory. Now, when it comes to the brands that we talked about today, it's worth highlighting that although not all of the memory we have tested is ECC, all 3 of the brands that I generally talk about, not Sir Brent in this case, but they are moving in that direction. But the 3 brands I generally talk about the most when it comes to memory, Crucial, Kingston and Timetech, those 3 brands, and indeed ADATA, all provide ECC alternatives. The cost is generally around about 60% more in price, but they do still have those ECC alternatives. Now, we'll carry on with that in just a moment, but for now, let's head over to the screen again. And we're back. So let's go ahead and refresh our list. I've got my little list of memory over there. I forgot to issue that earlier. Log in. Maybe I should get the password correct. That would help. I could cut that out, but I'm not going to cut it out. And here we are back on the screen there. We've got our storage area there. We've got the notification there, just letting us know that the memory modules do it. The storage in there. We've got drives in there that aren't on the compatibility list. And we go into the control panel. And from the control panel, make our way into the info center. And boom, there is our 64 gig of DDR4 ECC memory. So again, it has seen the memory. There's still questions about how much it will be able to see it, such as going into the resource monitor there, perhaps setting up a virtual machine and allocating a lot of that storage to a VM. But without really breaking it down into the back end, it would take a little while for us to really nail down how much of that memory is accessible. And bear in mind, again, CPU manufacturers, when they issue recommended maximums of memory, a lot of the time it isn't just because of stability, but it's also because that is legitimately the most amount of memory that can be held at any given time. But at least as far as this test goes, we can see that 64 gig is visible. Now, before we wrap things up, let's talk a little bit about Synology memory and those third-party memories and their pricing. Probably one of the biggest motivators for a lot of people looking at these modules. I said I would. So for the sake of this box, the 4 and 8 and 16 gig modules are priced at £80, £179 and £348. Those are from the website box.co.uk. So £80 for a 4 gig module does seem like quite a lot. Now, if we put that into perspective, the Sabrent module that we started the video with, that little Sabrent 8 gig model, that knocks around for £49. So that's £49 with Synology's own 8 gig module at £179. Now, you might be wondering, wait, that's ECC though. Surely ECC, it's going to be cheaper. Well, again, moving away from that, when we go into the crucial memory module, the memory module we utilised, this 16 gig standard 2666 megahertz, knocked around for £62. Remember, the Synology one at 16 gig is £348. So 348 versus 170. 62 or £170 if you wanted this with ECC. So again, an enormous difference in price. And then when you look at the Kingston modules we had there at the end, I haven't pulled out the system yet, these modules set me back £115 each. Now, £115 for a 32 gig module, even if I wanted it at ECC 32 gig Kingston module, that would have been £208. So that's a single 32 gig module that's ECC for 208 when Synology are selling 16 gig ECC for 348, significantly more expensive. And for me, that's the big takeaway there for a lot of users. Because if you are an enterprise top tier level user, you're going to go first party because you just want to make sure that the brand is going to support you. You've bought a solution, they say it can do this thing, you want it to do this thing, you live within the guidelines. But I know a lot of users who know a little bit more about tech will look at this and go, I'll tell you what, these other memory modules, they ain't half cheap, or I could chuck some terabytes on for that. So I understand the reasoning on both sides, and I'm sure you can too, but just bear in mind that using these third-party modules can get dicey later on when it comes to support. So regardless of what you do, get your backups in order, make sure you keep the system as fresh and as straight down the line as possible, at least in terms of its running and operation, because the last thing you want is to use third-party modules and your system fail or you lose your data and for some reason it becomes inconclusive whether the memory can be pointed at as a factor. So if you're going to use third-party modules, just make sure that you have a squeaky clean NAS in every sense of the word. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Do let me know if you have. Again, I will continue to talk about this subject in 2022 because I've talked about it less in the last year or so, but it's still quite a prevalent topic, particularly with Synology and DSM 7.1. Otherwise, click like if you've enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to learn more as we explore this subject to its fullest, and otherwise there's a free advice section linked in the description to NAS Compares. Use it, ignore it, donate, don't pay, it's free, it's up to you. I'll see you next time.